I think your points about everybody being a village with kids is phenomenal. It can be a little bit harder when there's hierarchies or structures or something. So I'm thinking in a school setting, let's say all the kids are on Zoom right now. So parents have a different lens into their kids' classrooms than they've ever had before. If you think that a teacher maybe isn't addressing this as much as they could be, but you also, telling a teacher how to do their job is, you don't want to do that either. And that's a tricky thing. How can you bring it up in a work setting, maybe where there's hierarchical structures, or in a school setting where there's hierarchical structures? I know you work with schools a lot. Family is one thing. You can give a thing to your sister. You can say, dude, you got to be reading this book to your kids. What are you doing? You can't do that in some other settings. So how do you approach it in those more formal situations?
I think there are multiple, or I look at this in multiple ways, and I have a personal kind of story that I can share of a parent I know that recently shared something she witnessed from her child in class, with something where, like, they were talking about Black history, and it was like, I think 10-year-olds, and they were kind of going back and forth, and a young, girl, I'm sure, was kind of reflecting what she heard at home, and she was just like, well, why do we have to always just talk about, Black people? And, she was just a young 10-year-old girl, and the mother kind of shared the way her son responded, like, just brought her to tears. Like, he like stood up for himself. He was very, which is not every kid's story and journey, right? Not all kids feel comfortable doing that. But I think when it comes to that, when we talk about that, the home influence, if we're pouring into our children, and I'm not going to say properly, because I don't believe there's like a proper way to do it, right? Like, there's no manual to this. But if we're doing the best we can, and we're pouring into our children, and we're giving them that information and that knowledge, watch them, right? And they'll do things, and they'll stand up in spaces where you're like, whoa, was that my 10-year-old? So I think I say that to say, a lot of times, if we're having those conversations with our students, many times they're not that afraid to question authority. I think children question authority more than we sometimes are comfortable. Like, I remember that was why I got in trouble the most, because I asked too many questions and I talked too much. But it's just one of those things where you have that. I think another way to do it is to remind folks, and I had to learn this with the school that I work with. This is about enhancement. I think a lot of times folks feel attacked when you make them feel like they're doing something wrong. It's not to say you're doing anything wrong. I'm not here to tell you that you're doing a bad job, that you're a bad teacher, that you're a bad school. I just want to enhance this, like, the experience for everyone. So is it possible that we add some additional books to the reading list that reflect students of color? Is it possible that we bring it, right? Just starting with that. And I think that's the thing I learned most. I'm working with a high school, and I've talked to the board members, and I've talked to the parents. And a lot of times I always have to ensure I'm approaching it from that lens of, I'm here to enhance the job that's already being done. You're doing a great job, right? You're teaching, you're influencing students, you're loving on them, you're pouring into them. However, there are students of color here. There are Black students, there are Asian students, right? Like, there are all these other students here who may need some additional support, who need to see themselves reflected. And so the school I'm in now, they're even like starting to change their curriculum, understanding that's going to be a process. That's going to take at least another year or two, because they already have this year going, right? And so they're finding ways to add activities and things like that on the side for those that want to be a part of it. But a year or two from now, they'll have a upgraded curriculum, and it's the word upgraded. It's not to say that what you were doing was bad. We're just enhancing it and making it better. And when you can talk in that sense and let folks know, like, I'm not calling you out, I'm just giving suggestions to make it better. I think that's one of the things I've learned that's just worked in some of the spaces.